We are going to be learning how to do the cross lap joint today. That's where half the material is removed on one piece, half the material is removed on the other, and they meet in a cross shape and end up flush with each other. To do that, you're going to need the material, two pieces of wood. The same thickness it's good if they're the same thickness, otherwise it doesn't actually work. So, first thing you want to do is mark halfway. You need a line halfway across on each of the pieces. So to do that, you can either eyeball it, but you never know if you're going to get it exactly right. But chances are you do. But I'm going to measure halfway here, and I'm going to do that just by starting at 0 here and marking at ½ of an inch. 0 and then 1 inch on this side, and then mark it ½ an inch. You can use any numbers you want. And since my pieces are the same thickness, I can use my combination square to establish a scribe, so I can scribe this. Now, when you're doing this, you want to be careful not to put the end of your ruler to the center, because your pencil's has a little bit of thickness to it, and when you put that down, if your ruler is, the end of the ruler here is exactly at center, then your pencil is going to be off center a little bit. So you want to always start by putting your pencil down on your mark and making sure that you have your ruler back enough so that when you use it as a slide, it will be centered with your pencil line. If that makes sense, then way to go. So I'm going to do this on both sides of my line. Just line across it. Doesn't actually look centered. What happened? There's my center line. Use the vise to help hold your pencil in the right place, or hold your piece of wood so that it's easy to do this. And what this is going to be our depth line. So it's telling us how far down we're going to cut. Alright, so some people ask whether we need it perfectly centered. You don't have to, but I'm going to center it anyways using the same method that we used for the dado joint. You can look at that if you want. That will be the edge of my piece and make it perfectly centered. If you doesn't make sense what I did there, go watch the dado joint one. Now I'm going to establish that as the edge of my joint. Now, can you see clearly? You're able to see that? Because what I'm going to do is flip it around. Now I'm going to use my guide block, and I'm going to clamp that right on my line there, because my saw is going to cut down to my line. So I take my clamp it down. I'm going to double check that I'm square here. I'm a little bit out, so take my end of my chisel or a mallet, just tap it until you're square, and then cinch it down the rest of the way. Take your saw, make sure that you're using the guide block to its full advantage, keeping pressure against the edge so that it stays vertical and straight. And this saw is a little crooked, but we'll try to use it. So now you're cutting down to your line carefully, looking. You don't want to go past your line early. Stop at your line. The bottom of your saw cut is going to be a guide for how deep you need to chisel. Got that side done. Time to move it over. I'm going to use my piece, that's the other joining piece, as my guide. Now I'm going to spin it around so you can see this. The very edge of this cut is where I want this lined up to, so it fits nice and neat. Very similar to the dado joint. Now that's where I want to clamp my guide block. What I'm doing with this hand, my left hand, is I'm putting pressure down on the guide block. The bottom of the clamp is just flopping there, and I'm making sure I have that right where I want it, before I tighten it. And if I don't have it quite where I want it, I can still adjust it by just tapping here to make sure that I can just see the edge of my first cut. That's exactly where I want to be. Now I'm going to saw down to my line. I might make a few intermediate cuts here too. Down to my line. I'm blowing away the sawdust so I can see that I'm actually at the bottom of my cut. There I am, happy with that. Now I'd like to chisel this out, so I'll need a mallet. And I'm going to, same as we did on the dado, come around over here. I'm going to chisel first at this level, and then another level, and then down to my line. So, and I'm also not going to go out the other end. Now, what's going to happen here is my piece is going to pivot. So I'm going to take this out, set it up in the vise so that it doesn't bounce around on me. Now the bottom of these cuts are how deep I need to go. And now I'm going to switch to going by hand without the mallet because I want to establish that edge really nice and clean. And I'm doing that by cutting it at an angle. I'm using my thumb to put pressure down on the chisel, keeping the bottom straight, and maybe spinning the handle out to get right to my line. All right, so I get a nice smooth edge there. All right, spin it around. I'm going to do the other side. Getting close, and then I'm switching to by hand here, right to my line. Okay, now I just got to remove everything in there. You can use your combination square as a guide. Set that to the depth you want it to be. And now I can see if they have a gap underneath here, then I haven't gone far enough down. I'm also using the bottom of these cuts as my guide. So now I'm just going to go along here and clean out the inside. Now these fibers aren't coming free. Well, they did there. So chiseling this carefully, using it with the bevel side up. Bevel of the chisel is up. Clean up these corners maybe a bit. Inspecting it visually. Actually looks like it should be pretty good, but we won't know until we get the other piece done. So I'm not going to talk this one through, I'm just going to do it, and you'll have to watch and follow along. Of course, I'm joining this one. Check if I'm square here. I'll use another square for that. Not quite square. There we go, block it. Cut down to my line. Now I gotta establish the other shoulder. Right there. Bumped it. little bit. Bevel up. Don't go all the way across. Bring it close to, oopsies, went through. Close to your line. And I take it the rest of the way down by hand. More control. Before your time to do as good a job as you can. Without rushing. I twist the handle back and forth like that. It cuts and shears the wood kind of like a scissors a bit. Okay, pretty close. There's a couple of, this right here is perfect. It's flush. Something's holding it from going down here. I'll have to inspect that because I'd like that to be perfectly flush. But the fit is excellent because it's holding together just on friction. So that's your cross lap joint.